to Shattering Myths. For those that didn't catch the number, the Great Debasement, which is a marvelous book. I have read it by Craig Smith. It is available to you for free if you call toll-free 800-289-2646 and mention Shattering Myths with Yahowah. He will provide that book to you for free. 800-289-2646. Yesterday, in our program, as we were considering the Torah's presentation of the flood, Yahowah said something that is truly profound, but it's missed in 100% of English translations, as he was describing the cause of the flood for this region, which goes now from east of Eden, which would be the area around Lake Van in eastern Turkey, the headwaters of the Tigris-Euphrates River, throughout the region of the Black and the Caspian Seas, and then all the way down to the mouth of the Tigris-Euphrates River, which would be in Iraq today, is the city. He says, in the second month of the 17th day of the month, in that day, a great magnitude and quantity of deep ocean water, ta'on, and all underground springs, subterranean cisterns, mayan, burst and gushed forth, bakah, and the floodgates of the skies, shamayim, were opened, patah, and aruba is floodgates. So water was coming in every direction. Nothing could have escaped, especially in this region known for its vast basins, which were surrounded by towering volcanic ranges. For most, it would have been over moments after it began. I mean, this is something vastly more rapid than what the Philippines, and more massive than the Philippine town of Tacloban experienced just here a week or so ago. Now, a search through Teom's etymological past tells us that the word is based upon an Akkadian root. Akkadian was the language of the Babylonians and the Assyrians. Akkadian was the second language to be communicated via an alphabet. It was the first actual written language, but with cuneiform originally communicating the Akkadian dialect. And in Akkadian, the root of Taom means deep seawater. In Hebrew, it conveys the idea of oceans, water roaring up from the depths, from the primeval abyss, in overwhelming quantities and force, creating wave upon wave without intermission. So as clearly as words allow, Taom depicts the result of a massive asteroid impact in the ocean. Deep waters rise up in overwhelming quantities, creating a tsunami event whereby wave after wave of seawater roars inland. And I say an asteroid impact because the only other cause of now there's two other causes potentially of tsunamis. One of them is if a huge side of a landmass collapses into the ocean, that would create a tsunami. And also, if a earthquake happens in the oceans, the earthquake will create a tsunami. The 2004 tsunami around the late December that inundated so much of Indonesia and India and that area, it was caused by an earthquake. Now, an earthquake, though, born tsunami, or a landslide born tsunami, it will push the surface water of the earth. It will create a wave, therefore a tsunami, of the surface water of the ocean. But that's not the nature of an asteroid impact. When an asteroid hits, it takes the water at the very base of the ocean and it shoots it up into the sky, and it shoots it out in terms of tsunami waves. It is That's the reason why the crater is found at the very bottom, and in this particular case, there is a crater. So, deep waters rose up in overwhelming quantities, creating a tsunami event whereby wave after wave of seawater roared inland. Now, I want you to keep this in mind as we now know the definition of Taum, because we're going to explore what really happened on this fateful day, especially recognizing that Noah and his ark were landlocked at the time 600 miles from the nearest saltwater sea. To emphasize the relevance of now 40 when it comes to quantifying the time of this testing, it says, the rain continued to exist, to endure upon the land for 40 days and 40 nights. Now, it's not saying that the first two causes, which were primarily the upwelling of seawater, which then prompted a release of underground cisterns, and then ultimately rain, didn't say that the upwelling of seawater was going to last for 40 days and 40 nights. But it said that what we now know was an asteroid impact triggered conditions whereby it rained in this region for 40 days and 40 nights. The continued presence of the rain would have diminished as the influence of the tsunami's salt deposits from the upwelling seawater enabled native plants in the area to grow again. Now, the Torah says that the animals in this region east of Lake Van were directed by Yahowah to come to Noah, peacefully, without hunting them down, trapping them, coaxing them, without Noah's family chasing after them, or them eating one another. A male and female specimen of each species left their natural habitat and walked, crawled, or flew to the ship. Since that takes some doing, it might explain why the passage is the only place in the whole of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms where a Ruach spirit is associated with the animals. That said, I think that the words convey another reality, that Yah's spirit led them. Noah and his sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark, and they and every animal according to its kind, and all domestic animals according to their kind, and every creature that moves about on the ground after their kind, and every winged creature and bird according to their kind, coming into Noah's ship, a pair of 2 of each kind of creatures in association with his spirit of life. So, in association with his spirit means it was Yahweh's spirit that undertook this. The determining factors as to whether the spirit of life was in the creatures or whether it was God's spirit leading them or just there to protect everyone, governing this and our assertion of what is being said, we find Asher, Ba, and Hu. Asher speaks of relationships and of those that are especially beneficial. It is a relational term which designates a beneficial or fortuitous association. It marks a connection between things, and yet is often translated whom, even though it is a relational and beneficial concept. Ba means in or with, but it can also convey among. The pronoun who is the third person masculine singular. As such, it makes more sense to render it his than to ignore it, as most all English translations do, especially since it would make no sense to use a singular pronoun to identify animals or to have a masculine pronoun address a feminine noun like ruach, unless there's a very good reason for it being there. Now, confirming that it was either Yahweh's spirit leading the animals into the ark or there to protect everyone inside from the brewing storm, the next passage reveals. And entering males and females from every creature came to and entered just as relationally and beneficially he, the Almighty, had instructed. And Yahweh shut the door behind them. Now, it's interesting. Yahweh had Noah build this ark, this ship, to his specification, helping him all along the way. But Noah had to engage. He had to listen to God's guidance, his instructions regarding how to build the ark, and then the result was this mighty ship, the 600 miles from the nearest sea. And that happened to be a giant lake, even at the, I guess it would be the Mediterranean, about 600 miles from the Mediterranean, because at this time the Black Sea was actually fresh water, as was the Caspian Sea. It didn't become salt water until this event. And so you have then Noah acting upon God's guidance, but once Noah was safely inside, once the animals were safely inside, who was it that closed the door? Yahowah. Now, that, my friends, is symbolic of the nature of the covenant relationship. Once God's family chooses to heed and pay attention to and act upon Yahweh's Torah instructions regarding his covenant, and we enter his family, the door's closed behind us. We are protected inside, but those who still cling to religion and politics and all manner of human schemes are locked outside. They can't come in. This is the realization that the covenant and the ark are a metaphor. The ark is a metaphor for the covenant. And so the door was closed. Once God's children and the animals that he created were inside, the door was closed. Everyone else was shut out. This notion that God wants to save everyone and that everybody is welcome is torn asunder by this concept. He did not leave a door open. He did not leave a ladder off to the side that says, okay, all you people who chose not to pay attention to my instructions, who rejected my guidance, come on in. No. He locked the door. He closed the door. They were excluded. The same thing is true with every religious and politically minded individual today. They're excluded. The door is closed. Mechanisms aside, the door reference, of course, is noteworthy. Yahusha is routinely positioned in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms as the doorway to eternal life. He is the upright one upon which Passover's door is secured. When addressing the Laodicean called-out assembly, for example, the Protestant Christians in Western democracies, Yahweh, through Yahusha, says that he is standing by the door. They're on the outside. He is encouraging them to come in. So the moral of the story for those who are represented by the Laodicean assembly. Laodicea means the lay people rule. God is speaking of Christians in the Western democracies who are outside of his covenant, who are outside of his ark of protection, and bad things happen when you find yourself in that position. That those during the flood experienced the deluge. They died. Those in the tribulation, which is the time that Yahweh is depicting, they will die. There's only one means to eternal life, and that is that those who benefit from this gift are those who have chosen to pay attention to Yahweh's instructions and have embraced the terms and conditions of the covenant. Keep in mind also that the set-apart spirit serves as a protective enclosure for us, just as the ark protected those who were inside. The ark, like the garden, serves as a metaphor for being protected as part of God's family. Yahweh has never been shy when it comes to repeating something he wants us to remember. So he said the flood existed 40 days on the land. The waters increased and lifted up the ark high above the ground. Ground being here from Eretz. He goes on to say, this is Genesis now 7:18. The waters prevailed to a significant degree, exerting substantial force. Boy, do we ever know that's the case. This is a repeat of moed, of ma'od, I should say, of ma'od. Anytime that a Hebrew word is repeated, it means that it takes the concept of that word to an exponential degree. So he is saying that the waters prevailed. They had a powerful influence to a highly significant degree, exerting substantial force. And he says, on this entire region of land. And the lofty mountains were completely concealed. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat here this morning. The lofty, which is the high, the tall, the majestic mountains, and in this particular case, they were almost all volcanic mountains around Lake Van, which would be the mountains of Arafat. The lofty mountains were completely covered and concealed. This word is kasha, actually, K-A-S-A-H, or from the root of K-S-H. They were obscured and hidden. They were veiled, if you will, or blanketed is the meaning of this term. So the mountains were covered. They were blanketed there under the entirety of the sky. Water prevailed 15 cubits deep on the higher elevations, as to hide and veil, to cover and conceal, to obscure and blanket the hills. Now, for those who are wont to believe that Eretz means the whole earth as opposed to the planet, you are faced with two insurmountable problems in this passage. First, there is no evidence for a massive flood covering the entire earth, ever, much less one occurring between 2,400 and 3,000 BCE. In fact, there is overwhelming proof to the contrary. And while there are considerable examples of regional floods and a plethora of accounts regarding them, mean sea level has never been 29,000 feet, give or take a few cubits, higher than it is today. If there had been a global flood of this proportion, we would find evidence of an enormous saltwater layer in the Arctic snowpack, but we don't. We would find evidence of the extinction of all fish, fresh and saltwater varieties, because fresh water would have become too saline and the ocean water too pure for fish in either environment to survive. But there's no evidence, ever, much less within the past 4,000 years. Not only was Noah bereft of an aquarium on his yacht, landlocked 600 miles from the nearest ocean in eastern Turkey, God didn't send fish swimming 2 by 2 his way. Now, the people who heard and understood Eretz had no concept whatsoever of the world as we know it, or of Earth as in a planet. They understood land, dirt, ground, soil, territory, region, realm, and area. That's what Eretz meant to them. And they understood those concepts then. Today, we have a worldview, and we know that the Earth is a planet. So we are projecting our perspective on Eretz when we assume that God was using it to speak of a flood over the entire world. Welcome back to Shattering Myths. We have Larry on the line. Before I say hello to Larry, however, be aware that, as I said in a previous program, if Yahowah wanted to say that he flooded the entire world, he had a perfectly good Hebrew word to convey world. That word is tebel. He did not use it. He used Eretz, which means region. It means land. So he flooded this land. And we do find that, indeed, if you look at where the ark was built and where the asteroid that we will soon identify struck, this land was clearly flooded right at the time that God tells us it was. The problem, of course, is that English Bibles want to change what God said, and they're the ones who, on occasion, translate Eretz incorrectly as world. They'll say, for example, the whole world came to listen to Solomon's wisdom. Well, the number of people that might have come to listen to Solomon's wisdom may have been from the same region that God flooded. But it is an absolute myth to think that the entire earth was flooded. Not even remotely possible. Hello, Larry. Welcome to the program. I understand you have a view on Noah and the ark that is, I'm certain, consistent with Yahowah's view and inconsistent with the religious perception.
Well, the religious perceptions make a mockery out of Yahowah's words. They probably helped to create a lot of atheists, to be honest with you. And I was going to bring up the Tabel as being meaning world. It was a perfectly good word, right. And Yahowah's a good communicator. You got another problem here, too.
Yeah.
How long do you think it might take an aardvark to walk from Africa or a kangaroo, how to get there from Australia, and grizzly bears from the Yukon? I mean, you have real problems with this worldview. It's almost like magic.
Right.
We're back in following the yellow brick road and tapping our shoes that are ruby slippers.
And yet the Christian depictions will show giraffes and elephants because they're cute, marching into the ark, and yet. How did they get there from the vast plains of southern Africa? That just didn't happen. And it didn't need to happen, because what God will tell us at the conclusion of this, and if people just pay attention to his terminology, is that what was eliminated were Homo sapiens with a Nasalma. And the only Homo sapiens with an Asalma at this point, approximately 1,000 years from the fall of and the expulsion of Adam and Yahowah from the garden, would have been those who lived from where the Garden of Eden was, which is in eastern Turkey, down through the waterway of the Tigris and Euphrates River all the way to its mouth, which would have been in Ur of the Chaldeans.
In other words, in that region.
That region.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the second problem that globalists have with this previous passages is that even if all of the polar ice caps were completely melted, and we're talking now about a period of time that is approximately 5,000 years ago. And if you look at that time, we were, the last ice age was 12,000 years ago. We have not had, in the middle of that time, a complete wiping out of the polar ice caps. But even if all of them were melted, even if all of the Earth's underground cisterns were open, and even if all of the moisture was wrung out of the atmosphere, there isn't sufficient water on, in, and above the planet for a global flood covering the Rockies, much less the Himalayas.
Right, but there would be so much moisture in the air that Noah wouldn't have been able to breathe,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Killed him.
So, in fact, with a global flood, there would have been so much humidity. Yep, you're right, that the air literally would have been so supersaturated you couldn't breathe.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if you look at the area for a regional flood of, shall we say, biblical proportions, in the area God was focused upon, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, beginning between the Black and Caspian seas, at the time that this was revealed. Now, that's confirmed both scientifically and archaeologically, and we're going to get into that in a moment. So up to the point that God said the lofty mountains were completely covered and concealed, obscured under the entirety of the sky, with the water showing itself 26 feet above them, hiding and veiling the hills, we were on solid ground with a regional catastrophe. But how does one contain water so that it is above and it covers mountains without spilling out somewhere else? My guess is, Larry, you've seen such concealment of mountains that didn't inundate everything below them.
It's called snow.
There you go. The answer is snow on the mountains and the basins to hold the water below them. After 40 days of continuous rain, nearly 26 feet of snow would have been expected in the upper regions of the lofty volcanic regions or mountains and ranges surrounding the area. And snow fits the description of hiding, covering, concealing, veiling, clothing, blanketing, and obscuring perfectly. Better than liquid water does, because liquid water is transparent. It does not conceal. I, by the way, deserve no credit, however, for recognizing this. An English physicist forwarded an article he had written on the subject a week before I was confronted with trying to properly render kasha, which is blanketed or concealed. The Hebrew word for snow is seleg. Recognizing that seleg snow is nothing more than frozen mayhem water, both words were used in Job 24:19, describing the effect of drought and heat on seleg mayhem snow waters. And while seleg snow appears 20 times in the Torah and prophets, mayhem waters was used repeatedly in the Torah because of its symbolism. Water is the universal solvent, therefore for cleansing, and water is the source of life. Without water, there is no life. The waters were intended to cleanse the world of corrupt humans and to provide the ingredients for those who were not corrupt to flourish. Now, the basin requirement is also met. The Taurus Mountains enclose this region to the southwest, to the south, to the southeast, and the east. The Pontic Range dominates the northeast. The imposing Cascades Mountains, the Caucasus, I said, not Cascades, but the Caucasus Mountains lie due north of the region. That means the only opening in the area defined as east of Eden is the Black Sea, the world's largest and deepest inland water basin. And as we should have known, the most massive example of regional flooding in all of the Earth's history, Earth as in a planet now, at least within the past 5,000 years, took place in the region right around, guess where?
The Black Sea.
There you go. When we pan out and look at the whole Middle East, we find an even larger basin, one with the Black Sea as the northern perimeter and Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates River, at its heart. A range of mountains extends from eastern Turkey down through western Syria and Jordan, along the eastern border of Israel. It continues down the whole shore of Saudi Arabia. This range turns out to be the southern edge of the Arabian Peninsula, dipping down only at the Strait of Hormuz. This elevated terrain travels northeast through Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan prior to reaching the Himalayas, known as the roof of the world. From there, the Elburz Mountains flank the southern side of the Caspian Sea, turning north and joining the Caucasus and the Taurus Ranges. We have the world's largest basin. The only significant gap in the elevated perimeter of this gigantic basin, known as the Middle East today, is the narrow channel that separates the Persian Gulf from the Gulf of Oman. And that's intriguing because in 2005, scientists, and the scientists' names were Dallas Abbott and D. Breger, proved conclusively that a massive meteorite, in fact it would be a meteor versus a meteorite, struck the Indian Ocean 900 miles southeast of Madagascar.
Now that's the Burko crater, isn't it?
That is correct. And guess when it was dated?
Would have been in Noah's lifetime.
There you go.
Yeah, that's. I know it's dated like 5,000 years ago. Plus
what's interesting
1,500 years, which is all they can really do. So.
And the moment that they found what is now one of the largest asteroid or meteor impact craters on the Earth, deep in the ocean floor, the moment they found it, the first thing these scientists did is said, we found the explanation for the flood.
Yeah, well, yeah. So since he said he started it with deep ocean water, I understand that's 18 miles in diameter.
Yeah.
And 12,000 feet, below the surface of the sea. I mean,
yeah.
Wow.
Dated to around 2,800 BCE, which is just shy of 5,000 years ago. The impact left a massive circular depression. And you are correct. Those are its dimensions. 18 miles in diameter. 18 miles in diameter.
Yeah, I've done some extensive reading on that. It's massive. It would have caused that flood, period. And in that Yahowah said he'd started with deep ocean water. There it is.
Yeah. There it is.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Now, it gets especially interesting. According to the scientists, the asteroid created a tsunami event that raced inland towards the Persian Gulf and up through Mesopotamia, reaching the Mediterranean and also the Black Seas. Well, the height and speed of this wall of water is hard for scientists to determine with great confidence. Researchers like Ted Bryant, who are studying the evidence related to the Burckle crater, say that the huge waves were beyond our current imagination. They were many magnitudes larger than any tsunami experienced in modern times. Ted Bryant said, "The end of the world movies do not capture the size of these waves." Others have stated, if an event of this magnitude were to occur today, it would kill a quarter of the Earth's inhabitants.
That's 2.5 billion people. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, it's just awesome. Yeah.
The computer models that have now been run based upon the Burckle crater, its size of 18 miles in diameter, 12,000 feet below the surface of the sea, the computer models say that the wave heights would have exceeded 10,000 feet. Try to hang 10 on that one. We'll return with Shattering Myths after the commercial break. Welcome back to the final segment of Shattering Myths for today. We're having a discussion with Larry about the consequence of the asteroid known as the Burckle impact crater that hit the Earth precisely at this time, producing a tsunami that could well have been in the range of 10,000 feet high. There's a lot of evidence of this influencing the topography of the region, Larry. We know that the encroaching and retreating waters explain the inclination that we see in the mountain range now at the Strait of Hormuz. We also know why archaeologist Leonard Woolley found 30 feet of flood-deposited sediment above the oldest levels of Ur. So here you had a town of Ur at the mouth of what is now the Tigris and Euphrates River. And actually, it's now inland from the mouth because of the sediment. But right over that sediment, 5,000 years ago, 30 feet of flood-deposited sediment all at one time.
And you hear these things, and Yahowah tells us exactly how he did it. That the only, because he says deep ocean water, and an asteroid impact is the only way that could have been done. And here we
look at the Black Sea. The Black Sea was where at this time the world's most prominent civilizations were. So this is the this would be ground zero, the target for what Yahowah wanted to inundate. The Black Sea at this time was entirely fresh water. The Black Sea, the moment this occurred, became saline. In addition to that, it's not just that the Black Sea in an instant went from fresh to saline. The communities that were around the perimeter of the Black Sea were now 500 feet underwater. In an instant, the height of the water in the Black Sea rose 500 feet. The only explanation of this is the Burckle crater impact. And it's timed exactly when this flood would have occurred. Now, it's also interesting to contemplate other related effects of an asteroid impact of this scale. It's going to eject enormous quantities of water vapor into the air. And what's that going to cause?
It's going to cause rain on the order of 40 days and 40 nights.
Right. Absolutely. And it would catapult so much debris into the atmosphere, the strike would trigger what's known as a nuclear winter, causing the resulting precipitation to start warm in the onset and then transition to snow over time. That's why we transition to having this blanket of snow over the mountains and over the foothills with time. Moreover, the tremendous amounts of fresh water and rain and snow would serve to leach out all but the deepest basins like Lake Van and Lake Urmia, the Black Sea, the Caspian Seas, of salt, allowing plants to thrive soon thereafter. The ocean waves retreated. Now, recognizing that the Black and Caspian Seas are watersheds for most of Europe and Russia, the continued rain would have provided ample water to replace that which was now spilling out through the Bosporus Strait. The Bosporus Strait came to exist at the same time, as well as through the Strait of Hormuz. Those are the two places where the floodgates that from the tsunami would have drained out. The only floodgates in the entirety of the Middle East basin. Now, with this asteroid impact in mind, let's consider once again what God said in Bereshith 7:11. And that day, a great magnitude and quantity of deep ocean water and all underground springs burst forth and gushed forth, and the floodgates of the skies were opened. Sure sounds like he was an eyewitness to this event, doesn't it to you?
Yeah, yeah. All these things are verifiable. Everything that Yahweh says his words are verifiable, and they are verifiable.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you're dealing with here, too, is God telling us exactly how it happened, and then we're able to find the evidence that this is indeed precisely what occurred. A massive asteroid.
What are the odds? Let's dig up Jimmy the Greek and ask him. But it's
of a chance fulfillment of this. That all of a sudden there was this upwelling of seawater that deluged this entire region, and oh, by the way, there's an impact crater exactly at the right place, exactly at the right time, of exactly the right size to make all of this happen. Somewhere along the way, you've got to say, no, don't think it's a chance. Well, Larry, I hear the music playing in the background. It means we must have come to the end of our program today. I want to thank you for participating.
Topic, I appreciate it. I grew up in an atheist environment, so, when I see things like this, I just wish they would have